I'm very high on Grixis Twin this weekend as a response to decks like Amulet Bloom and Tron doing well last weekend.
One thing that will kind of be interesting in this particular matchup is how good is Kolaghan's command in this matchup. Now, of course, it is Destroyed Artifact and Shock against Affinity, and there are 2 main deck copies, but now we get to really kind of see it in action and see how Twin lines up against Affinity, and it's very clear what Osyp is doing right here at the start, as there is a Mox Opal, an Ornithopter, a Darksteel Citadel. The follow-up now is a copy of Springleaf Drum. He is chaining off, and now there's a Steel Overseer. Gonna put Andrew to the test right away of having an answer to that creature.
Well, you know, this is the test that Affinity puts you to. Do you have a removal spell or not? Osyp's hand might be really bad if the Steel Overseer dies. There's not a lot going on the table, even though there's a bunch of permanents.
Well, it's not gonna live, as there's a copy of Lightning Bolt. Modern's best removal spell has taken care of Steel Overseer.
Osyp, that's a man who needed a welding jar.
A little late to the party there with the old welding jar. There is a welding jar now. Good draw step. Whatever, Arcbound Ravager's good. Osyp's gonna go eat in there. There's Moxel who's gonna eat. He's gonna replay Moxel. We'll pass the turn back. He's empty-handed. Yep. He's got an Arcbound Ravager, and we can see what he can do on this particular board.
And you can see the charm of Kolaghan's command against Affinity in spots like this.
Wouldn't be bad here, that's for sure. Though the welding jar is pretty nice. Here are Serum Visions from Andrew. He'll draw a card, now he'll scry 2. Snapcaster Mage was the draw. So we'll take a look at those top 2 cards, and we'll see where they are headed. Also has a copy of Lightning Bolt in hand, but Welding Jar and Arcbound Ravager have that covered, it seems. Both cards go to the bottom there for Phillips. He'll just pass the turn back with no land to play. Lebedowicz will draw a card. Again, he is empty-handed. He looks like he has a spell to play. And it's a copy of Etched Champion, a card that's very good against Grixis.
Yes, very hard for them to kill. This is not your best card in the combo matchups. The matchups are about speed. Etched Champion's pretty poor, but any threat and removal type of matchup, Etched Champion does some pretty good work.
Now, many, many moons ago, Lebedowicz did win a Grand Prix with Affinity. It was much different times then, but back in 2004 at Grand Prix Orlando, he was your champion with Affinity.
Made a deep run at Grand Prix New Jersey many moons ago. He's been playing this deck for a very long time.
And earlier this year when we did Grand Prix Miami, he got 9th place on tiebreakers. So he can still game, and of course, he is a former Pro Tour champion with 3 Pro Tour top 8s. One of those players who's just on the outside looking in of the Magic Hall of Fame.
One more big finish. I think one more Pro Tour top 8, and he really starts to enter the conversation in earnest.
Osyp going to start sacrificing a few artifacts here to make this Ravager a little bit larger and get some relevant points of damage in. Start by sacrificing a Springleaf Drum. Ornithopter, that's not doing all that much, so sacrifice there. It's going to become a 4-power Arcbound Ravager now. See if he wants to go any bigger. Doesn't appear that he does, so get in for 4 points of damage, bring Phillips down to 14, pass that turn back.
And I like Osyp trying to turn on a bit of pressure here. Also allows him to keep the Welding Jar and still, even if he has to use the Welding Jar on something, he still has Metalcraft for the Etched Champion. So very nice distribution of resources here. Osyp with a fast clock and a lot of protection against removal spells.
See if Phillips can keep up with things. It did look like he drew a land for the turn, so he'll play an island. And now it's a copy of Snapcaster Mage, which will allow him to flashback Serum Visions. Serum Visions will be flashback, which means a card is coming here for Phillips, and then Scry 2.
And Osyp does not mind this turn at all. Really the only thing that he's concerned about is Andrew executing the combo. Osyp doesn't have a lot of interaction against it game 1, and as long as the game looks like this, Andrew's not going to be able to keep up. He really needs to combo out here, especially with Osyp having a large Arcbound Ravager and an Etched Champion.
Phillips will pass the turn back over to Lebedowicz. Lebedowicz going to untap and draw. A couple of lands out there for Osyp. If he does draw a 3-mana spell, he won't be able to play it. He does have copies of Master of Ethereum and another copy of Etched Champion in his main deck. And even a card like Cranial Plating right now, he would not be able to play and equip, unfortunately.
Yep. That is the concession that Osyp made when he made a move here to speed up his clock.
He's also opting to keep that Welding Jar. Does not want to let that go. Ornithopter was the draw. He does play that. He'll attack with both of his creatures. Snapcaster Mage looking to jump in front of the Arcbound Ravager. So where things get interesting is how much damage does Osyp want to try to push through here? He could put Phillips on a 2-turn clock if he says maybe eat your Ornithopter and move things on to the Etched Champion.
Yeah, he can make a pretty big push here. There is some charm in getting this Etched Champion to be a 7/7 with Andrew at 14. That's a 2-turn clock, and it's very hard for Andrew to interact with it.
And I wouldn't be surprised, especially with the Welding Jar out there as protection and Metalcraft turned on, if he were to make that move. Yep, and that's exactly what he's going to do. He'll eat Ornithopter. He'll move the counters over to Etched Champion. Etched Champion will come across for 7 points of damage. And Phillips, I can't imagine there's much a way to stop this outside of something like a Cryptic Command to tap the team down for a turn.
Right. There's no long-term solution at this point.
Yeah. And Phillips is going to play his Steam Vents untapped. He's going to go down to 5. And he does have a copy of Cryptic Command in hand, so Cryptic Command's going to probably go into fog mode here. It really doesn't have much of a choice.
Yep.
This is one of those times, as here comes Snapcaster Mage. Lebedowicz is going to go down to 18, where Edge Champion's text, protection from all those colors, very, very powerful. Lebedowicz will draw a card. Osyp says, I'm going to go to my attack step. You have to have Cryptic Command or you're dead. And we know that Andrew does, so there is a copy of Cryptic Command. That'll tap the team and draw a card here for Phillips. Darksteel Citadel was the draw for Lebedowicz, who places that into play and passes the turn back. Not sure Phillips really has a way out of this. Doesn't have Deceiver Exarch or Pestermite in play, so no Splinter Twin to peel.
Yeah, essentially, Andrew needs to Cryptic Command every turn, make land drops, and then get the combo into play. That's asking quite a bit.
Certainly with only 2 Cryptic Commands in the deck as well.
And that assumes that Osyp draws nothing relevant for the remainder of the game.
Yep.
This is just with what's on the table right now.
Andrew has not found a winning combination. He will concede the game. So Osyp Lebedowicz is going to win game number 1 here over Andrew Phillips. Affinity up a game over Grixis to win. As both players are moving to the sideboard, we will do the exact same. What does make things a little bit interesting there, you take a look at what Osyp saw in that game. You saw 2 islands, 2 Steam Vents, a Snapcaster Mage, a Lightning Bolt. There's no real giveaway of what Andrew's up to. You can assume Twin, but you could also maybe put him on something like Jeskai.
Yeah, there's no guarantee. I mean, Andrew, all those cards have the look of a Splinter Twin deck. And given that Andrew didn't really interact very often that game, he wasn't playing a lot of counter spells, it'd be weird if it wasn't a Splinter Twin deck. I think Osyp's going to sideboard accordingly.
Also, no black mana was shown, so there's no showing of a card like Tassiger or Kolaghan's Command either, though Grixis Twin is a pretty popular deck, so we'll see how Lebedowicz does sideboard. Same can be said, for Phillips, and we'll start with him and his Rending Volley, his Thoughtseize, 2 Spellskites, a Rakdos Charm, 2 Anger of the Gods, a Fulminator Mage, a Counterflux, another copy of Kolaghan's Command to go along with the 2 in the main deck, 2 Leyline of Sanctity, a Jace Architect of Thought, a Keranos God of Storms, and a Batterskull when he's looking to play a little bit more of a fair game. What do we like here and why?
Well, I think this is still a combo matchup here because of the speed that Osyp brings to the table, and even certain cards, Keranos, Batterskull, I think they're too slow or too easy for Osyp to work around. So I still think this is a combo matchup here. I think the 2 copies of Anger of the Gods, the copy of Rakdos Charm, does a lot of work here. The Kolaghan's Command is a great upgrade as well. So I think that Andrew's going to keep the combo intact, sideboard in some more removal spells, but still try to combo out.
For Lebedowicz, she's got 2 Ancient Grudge, 2 Whip Flares, 2 Blood Moons, 2 Thoughtseizes, 2 copies of Slaughter Pact, 2 Spellskites, another copy of Edge Champion, a Spell Pierce, and a Dismember.
Osyp's got some very good options here if he expects the combos in Andrew's deck, which I believe he does. 2 copies of Spellskite, the Dismember, the Slaughter Pacts, and the Spell Pierce all do very good work to that end. I think the additional copy of Edge Champion can also come in here. As you saw, Andrew had quite a bit of trouble working around that card. That is a lot of cards to sideboard in here, and Affinity is the type of deck where you need to keep a critical mass of artifacts in for your powerful cards like Arcbound Ravager and Cranial Planing to function. So I don't know if he's going to want to bring in all those cards, but there's legitimate arguments for the cards I just mentioned.
A lot of options. Now, Slaughter Pact is the one that really stands out to me on the sideboard because, that's a card we haven't really seen much recently, and a card that's very good against Twin decks.
Right. I mean, you sometimes see it in Jund and Abzan sideboards, but it's not like those decks are really straining to find removal spells that interact with the combo. And most of the time, people are boarding out the combo against those decks anyway, so boarding in a copy of Slaughter Pact is not really the most effectual thing. Here it's going to be great because it's a speed matchup. Sometimes Andrew's going to get draws where it's, turn 3 Exarch or Pestermite into turn 4 Twin. Osyp's going to tap out. Looks like the coast is clear. He's going to go for it, and Slaughter Pact can blow him out.
Well, these players will shuffle up here for game number 2. It'll be underway here in just a moment. And again, we want to thank you guys for joining us. Andrew Phillips, Patrick Sullivan, of course, Nick Miller and Ken Crocker in the sideboard, along with the rest of the SCG Live crew, bringing you Grand Prix Charlotte. SCG Live, hashtag GPCharlotte. For your tweets all weekend long, we're looking for your questions all weekend long. We'll be taking them on air. So if you guys have any thoughts on Modern, maybe some of the new cards that have been unveiled from Magic Origins, a couple have started becoming down the pipeline.
Oh, I've not seen any of the spoiled cards.
Oh,
Besides
nice.
the Planeswalkers.
Yes, of course.
But
of course.
If there's been more coming down the pipeline. Although I did read Mark Rosewater's article about the Evergreen keywords.
Yep.
They were shifting some of that around. I guess Scry is now becoming just something in the R&D arsenal for every set and every block, much in the same way that, not to the same extent that flying and trample will show up, but it's that kind of keyword now, where it will just show up in places.
Which is pretty cool, I think.
As opposed to being tied to blocks.
So fire your questions away, again, at SAG Live, hashtag GPCharlotte. You can send them directly at me and my iPad, at Cedric A. Phillips, or at Basic Mountain.
And I like the logic there. I mean, every single time they introduce a mechanic that has some sort of synergy-based pull to it, they feel the obligation to make some sort of smoothing keyword so people can find, the A and B they're trying to slap together a little more often. And if you feel the urge to make one of those keywords in every single block, why not just have Scry, which is relatively simple, works in the way that you want it to work, and then players don't have to memorize a new keyword every block. Just have Scry.
And I like Scry.
Yeah. It's a very popular keyword.
Both players take a look at their opening hands. Andrew Phillips will be on the play here with his Grixis twin deck. And this will be interesting to see just how good Kolaghan's command is against Affinity. You have to imagine it's quite a card in the matchup, but he hasn't drawn it yet.
With Osyp's draw there that game, Kolaghan's command would have done very little because of the Welding Jar, the Arcbound Ravager. He could have worked around Kolaghan's command that game.
Andrew going to take a mulligan very quickly. Lebedowicz is going to take a look at his opening hand. He's unsure if he wants to keep or mulligan. Phillips going to take a look at 6 cards here. It looks like Lebedowicz is happy enough with his 7. One thing about Affinity, it's not a deck you want to mulligan very much with.
No, all about critical mass.
Yeah.
The same reason that you can't sideboard in 7 spells easily. You just need this base of artifacts to make your payoff cards powerful enough to win games. Because there is a lot of garbage in the Affinity deck. There is a lot of Ornithopters and Memnites and Signal Pests. Cards that don't win the game on their own. They need the support of the real power.
Here's a copy of Pluto Delta to start things off for Phillips. Phillips considering a Watery Grave here. He's going to go with the Steam Vents, though. Already down to 17. See if perhaps a Serum Visions is on the way. Here's a fun question for you, because we are going to have a Serum Visions. This is, the one cantrip that we're allowed here in Modern.
That's not true. I believe Sleight of Hand is legal. There's some other options. Cataxian Probe. They're different cards, obviously.
I do forget the Sleight of Hand is legal because no one really plays it. Would Opt be too good?
I'm not sure if Opt would be too good. It's about in the same class as Serum Visions in my mind. There's just no real incentive for R&D to put cards like that into the format. They just lower variance and make games play out the same way. So Serum Visions is powerful, and that's the thing that the blue player gets to do. But I don't think there's a lot to be gained by doing more of it.
Lebedowicz going to start off with a Springleaf Drum. There's a Memnite that'll allow for a Vault Scourge to be played. Lebedowicz using the Phyrexian mana on Vault Scourge. He's going to go down to 18. And the land for the turn was a copy of Inkmoth Nexus.
So this is the garbage party that I talked about. This is why you need to have, your cards like Arcbound Ravager and Cranial Plating to make this deck succeed.
Slow build to the real stuff.
Yeah.
You got to get the trash out there first.
Right. Affinity without the payoff cards does get draws that can't beat a draft deck. But with the payoff cards, it's extremely powerful.
Here comes Midnight and Vault Scourge into the red zone. Lebedowicz going to gain a life, of course, from the lifelink from Vault Scourge. Phillips going to take some damage. Now here's a copy of Steel Overseer. Phillips going to sacrifice Blue Delta very, very quickly. We'll see what land he wants to search up here. So it looks like he's going to have a answer to the Steel Overseer. How dare you talk about Affinity like that? Couldn't beat a draft deck. Unbelievable.
Some of its draws can't. Your Vault Scourge, Memnite, Signal Pest type of draws sometimes cannot beat a Giant Spider. But with the good cards, all of a sudden you see how the deck starts to work a little bit.
2-4 reach. That's it. You win.
All right, yeah, well, I'm done. Well, Osyp's got 1 Galvanic Blast in his main deck, so he's not drawing dead to Giant Spider. But it's still not the card he wants to be playing against.
Raman is going to take care of Steel Overseer. A little surprised to see that in the deck after sideboard. Raman not great against this low-to-the-ground Affinity deck.
Yeah, Raman's really good when you're the one pushing ahead, when you're the one ahead on the board. Todd Anderson spoke about that in his Team or Twin deck tech or interview with us yesterday. You want to get underneath people to really leverage Raman. Hard to do against Affinity.
Yeah. Lebedowicz going to come across here yet again. You saw Phillips on his turn. Just play him out and pass the turn back. See if Lebedowicz has any sort of interaction for maybe a twin draw here from Phillips. I believe he may have the 1-2 punch in hand. Steel Overseer didn't resolve last turn. Makes you wonder if he's going to try to cast it this turn. There's a Blinkmoth Nexus. Here's a copy of Springleaf Drum.
Now remember, Osyp's got some good sideboard cards against the combo here. Remains to be seen if he has them, but dismember especially Slaughter Pack.
Yeah, Slaughter Pack's the big one for me. Not a lot of players are going to see that coming. And with Lebedowicz just playing Springleaf Drum and passing the turn back, that's going to cause Phillips to slow down a little bit, you may imagine. Though, here is a Deceiver Exarch. That's going to slow down that Blinkmoth Nexus. Will Phillips try to go for the combo here? Well, he's playing Steam Fence on tap, so it certainly feels that way. There is Splinter Twin. Does Lebedowicz have an answer? The answer is no. He tried to bluff one. Phillips went for it anyway, and he was correct in his read. So Grixis Twin going to tie things up here against Affinity. It does make you wonder how Osyp sideboarded those, since again, he didn't see a lot in game number 1.
I would be surprised if Osyp did not bring in at least some of his creature removal in. Maybe Andrew is playing some sort of weird Izzet control deck, but that looked like had all the makings of a twin deck game 1 that just didn't draw the combo. So, and it looks like Osyp is not even reaching for a sideboard right now. So I imagine whatever removal he wants for this matchup was already in his deck for game 2, just didn't happen to draw it.
And that must be the case. It's neither player going back to the sideboard. They're shuffling up and getting ready for game number 3 here very, very quickly. So Lebedowicz will be on the play. We'll see if he can have more explosive draw with this Affinity deck for game number 3. Jacob Brooks asking Patrick, what do you guys think about the red-white Village Bell Ringer Restoration Angel version of twin decks? Now, I'm assuming that he's talking about Jeskai, as opposed to just being a red-white deck with Splinter Twin and Kiki-Jiki.
I think it's harder for that build of the deck to convert into a normal control deck in the matchups where that's what you want to do. That's why I like the Grixis build most of all, because I think it's the one with the smoothest conversion into a Grixis control deck.
I think that you have to be able to shift into a control deck, I believe. That's certainly a version of the deck that we have seen people play before with Restoration Angel and Kiki-Jiki. Some number of Village Bell Ringers as well. That deck has surfaced throughout Modern's history, but I think I agree with you. You know, if you want to do this twin thing, you're either going to be just blue-red or Grixis.
Yeah, I think that a lot of those kind of decks, like the Restoration Angel build, is interchangeable with Grixis Twin game 1. All these decks are about the same thing. It's the same number of combo pieces, same amount of disruption, same amount of card drawing. You know, it's kind of suited to taste. Post-board is where you see the nuances with the decks really surfaces, and right now, I like where Grixis is more than the other builds of the deck.
Samuel Mitchell wondering what we think about Merfolk splashing green for Collected Company. For me, why splash?
Right, I like Merfolk with Mutavaults and really solid mana and taking no damage off of its lands. Collected Company is pretty powerful, but I think once you want Collected Company, you probably want Thassa in the deck as well. And maybe that's a card you do want. And if you're interested in Thassa, then I can see the argument. But I was really impressed by the mono blue build that we had at the top 4, I believe.
Yeah, Richard Adams last week on the Season 2 Invitational.
That deck impressed me. That was better than I thought it was going to be. And I would build something close to that if I was inclined to play Merfolk.
Yeah, if you want to talk about kind of a techie card to play in that deck, I was really impressed by Monastery Siege.
Yep.
Really good against Burn.
Oh, yeah.
Phillips going to send his hand back.
It can only be so bad.
Yep.
And the matchups where it's good because of the Dragons mode, it's really hard to beat.
Yeah, the interesting thing about Monastery Siege, I think some people may have forgotten, you think about the second mode has that Frost Titan-esque mode, but it's also Frost Titan for you, which means that it's actually just the 3-mana chill.
Yep.
And given what Chill has done against red decks and how Burn is targeting you with their burn spells, of course, you know, Lava Spike has to cost 3 mana. Lava Spike at 1 mana isn't even great. At 3 mana, it's horrible.
Yeah, it's not good in that kind of matchup, which is more about playing to the board. It's kind of a Grim Lavamancer matchup, and your Lava Spikes go from bad to really bad with this card in play.
Phillips going to take a look at 6 cards. Darksteel Citadel, a passing of the turn by Lebedowicz. That's it for turn 1. Well, you have to assume he's got a really explosive turn 2 then. Yep. If this is his turn 1 play. Phillips is going to play his Steam Fence untapped, and now here is Serum Visions. So he'll draw a card, of course, Scry 2. We'll see where these cards will go. Again, Phillips on 6 cards this game. Does have a Lightning Bolt and Cryptic Command in hand. Lebedowicz on 7, though turn number 1 was very honest.
Kolaghan's command as well. Looks like Andrew's hand flush with removal.
There's a Darksteel Citadel, excuse me. Here's Mox Opal. There's Net's Champion. Now, that's the card that won Lebedowicz game number 1. But it was off the back of Archbound Rabbit for making it very large. A 2-2 on turn 2. That's not all that impressive.
It's slow for the matchup, but if it's paired with Arcbound Ravager or Cranial Plating, then things start getting really good for Osyp.
I'm a lot more interested then, that's for sure. Spellskite in Lebedowicz's hand at this point. That's the protection he's looking for against Twin. There's a copy of Inkmoth Nexus. There's a copy of Arcbound Ravager. Now he's turning up the heat a little bit.
And normally Arcbound Ravager is the real prize. But Osyp wanted the test spell with the Ravager first because Spellskite's so good in this situation. It shuts down a lot of Andrew's removal, prevents the combo from being an issue.
Lightning Bolt's going to go after the Ravager, so I think we're going to see a little bit of movement here now from Lebedowicz.
I mean, Osyp can play this straight up and just say, okay, move it on to my edge champion, now I have a 3-3.
Yep. Perhaps he goes a little bit bigger, though.
Well,
depends on the contents of the hand, of
He
course.
wants to preserve Metalcraft also. He's got a Mox in play, he's got the edge champion, so I think Osyp's going to be pretty conservative with this Lightning Bolt. It wouldn't surprise me if he just let it resolve. Maybe he sacrifices one expendable artifact. If he has another Mox in his hand, for example, that's a good time to cash in, but I would be surprised if Osyp did anything too crazy.
This is the tricky part. This is the math part of Affinity. But, okay, how can I basically close this game out as fast as I possibly can? Because right now, 18, if you were to make, if you were to put 4 counters on the Ravager and then move on to the champion, you got a 3-turn clock. But you can also say, you know what? You'll probably play some lands that will deal you damage in untapped Ravnica lands or fetch lands or what have you. So he's just going to sacrifice Mox Opal, make this into a 4-4. He's still got Metalcraft. He still has Spellskite, attack here for 4 points of damage.
Yeah, this is nice. It's a pretty fast clock here. He's not immediately concerned about the combo. Andrew needs to have a removal spell for the Spellskite to be able to execute that. Good clock that's hard for Andrew to interact with.
Now might be a very, very good time to be playing Edge Champion. I know Osyp has made a split on the card. He's got 2 Edge Champions and 2 Master of Ethereums in his main deck. He's got the 3rd Edge Champion in the sideboard. Certainly good in this matchup.
Yeah, Edge Champion is just a little low in, the speed matchups is just not doing very much.
Yeah.
And that's a matchup where Master of Ethereum really shines. So splitting the difference, and then in the post-board games, you can be more focused on one or the other.
Snapcaster Mage does flashback Asarum Visions. This is a turn where if Lebedowicz has a card like Cranial Plating, this gets out of control pretty quickly, but looks to be a more honest turn. Just going to fire up an Inkmoth Nexus, come across here for a little bit of impact and a little bit of regular damage. Got to cover all sides.
A little column A, a little column B.
Absolutely. Phillips down to 10 and has 1 infect. There's a polluted Delta for Phillips. See our Tom Ross poison counter from his invitational win last year in the Open Series.
And that polluted Delta, big draw there for Andrew as he was missing black mana, and now the Kolaghan's commands in his hand, they are turned on.
Yep. And that's the scary one, right? You really want to see how good this card is against Affinity. It's obvious that it would be good in the matchup because of the text on the card. That's right, he's finally drawn one. We'll see how it actually has an effect on this particular game. Lebedowicz ready to go to the attack step. Looks like he's going to start by firing up Inkmoth Nexus, perhaps. We'll see.
Well, now he's in a spot where Shatter plus Shock is really powerful if he fires up the Nexus. Love this play from Osyp.
Likewise.
He's aware that Kolaghan's command is now a potential issue here. If he fires up the Nexus, he's likely to just lose it for nothing, along with the Spellskite.
Going to come across here for 4.
Very sharp.
4 damage will be dealt. Phillips is going to go down to 6. He'll sacrifice his polluted Delta, go down to 5. We'll see if the next land enters the battlefield tapped or untapped.
There's also just not a lot for Osyp to gain from putting 1 infect on Andrew.
Absolutely.
All other things being equal, it looks unlikely that that's going to be really be coming up this game. And so no reason to risk additional removal spells.
There's a basic swamp. And what Osyp can do here, maybe he loses the Spellskite to Kolaghan's command. It looks like that'll probably be the case, but he's got Metalcraft locked in with those 2 Darksteel Citadels and Edge Champion.
Yep.
Not going anywhere.
The concern is now, if you're on Osyp's side, there is a path if Andrew has Kolaghan's command. Next turn, you knock him down to 1 if you have nothing to follow up with, and you're vulnerable to the combo.
Yep. There's Kolaghan's command. Spellskite, you're going to have to leave. And probably discard a card will be the other mode.
Yep.
Now, what you can't see in Lebedowicz's hand, or perhaps you can if you got a sharp eye, he does have a copy of Slaughter Pact in hand.
I think he also may have his sideboarded Spell Pierce as well.
Okay. We've talked about it many times. You draw those sideboard cards in this format, your chances of winning certainly go up since they're so powerful. In this situation, you've seen just how good Spell Sky can be. Slaughter Pact in hand, protecting against the combo, and even the Spell Pierce looks pretty good if he wants to use it here.
Yeah. Just
So I'm certainly giving some thought here if he does have Spell Pierce in hand.
This seems like a pretty good spot to use a Spell Pierce here. Osyp's only got a single source of colored mana here, so he doesn't want his hand to get bottlenecked with colored mana spells and not be able to deploy them all efficiently. And you have an opponent casting a pretty good spell here and can't pay for Spell Pierce. This seems attractive. I guess the thinking is, you know, if Osyp feels like he has to use cryptic commands to beat him, maybe those are juicier targets.
Yeah, Osyp has opted to let Kolaghan's command resolve. Excuse me. Spellskite's dead. Destroy target artifact mode. Discard a card. He discarded Dismember.
But Kolaghan's command is pretty tame on this board now. There's nothing to shatter, nothing to shock. Making Osyp discard a card doesn't do very much. And this is some pretty tight play from Osyp, where the Kolaghan's command could be something he has to play around here and making sure it does as little as possible.
It's very telling how people kind of view Kolaghan's command. Last weekend at the Season 2 Invitational and our Modern Open on the Open Series, players didn't really play Affinity because they were really scared of the card because the hype was so big on the card. As Affinity players maybe have played against it more, they say, you know what, I can beat this card. I mean, look what Edge Champion's doing right now.
There's also a big difference, you know, when you're talking about a deck like this versus Jund. Jund is so saturated with removal that you run out of resources and then Kolaghan's command gets everything. And it's hard to avoid that.
Lebedowicz looking to go to the attack step. Here's a Deceiver Exarch. Now that cannot tap out Edge Champion. It can certainly target that Glimmer Void though, and that's not a bad target at all. Lebedowicz going to fire up his Inkmoth Nexus with that mana, it appears.
Yeah, doesn't really care if Andrew rather wants to use a Lightning Bolt on this Nexus. The game's not really about that, and so it's a free, in fact, if he wants it.
And he does take it. There's another copy of Glimmer Void and passing the turn back, so colored mana at the ready. Phillips at 1, Lebedowicz at 18. Lebedowicz sitting pretty right now with that Slaughter Pact in hand.
Yeah.
But also that Edge Champion, which cannot be stopped.
This is also combo or cryptic command or bust.
Yep.
I mean, this is lethal, and removal spells are not going to help Andrew very much in this spot.
There is a cryptic command in hand. However, somebody doesn't have 3 blue mana at this point. And being at 1 life, a fetch line's certainly not going to help. And a Ravnica Shockland, well, you can't even play that untapped.
And you mentioned Remand, a card you weren't really a fan of here. In the matchup that you saw in Game 2, and Andrew also choked with that in hand.
Yeah. Remand, a card that's really good in kind of these mid-range slog fests and can actually be really good in the blue mirrors as well. Todd Anderson, we've seen him use that to great effect in these matchups, remanding his own spells.
Yep.
But in a matchup like this where things are just so low to the ground and spells cost 1, 2, and at most 3 mana, really not at its best in this matchup.
Remand is not great when you are behind. Remand is one of the more powerful cards in all of Modern when you are ahead. And this is a matchup where it's pretty hard for Andrew to be the one that's ahead unless he's killing Osyp in one shot with the combo.
Lebedowicz going to draw a card. Because all Phillips could do was pass the turn back. I don't think we're going to say anything too fancy here from Osyp. You just put him to the test by saying, I'm going to go to my attack step. Let's see what you can do. And taking a look at Phillips' mana, again, he only has 2 sources of blue mana, so Cryptic Command doesn't even work its way into the equation here. There's your attack. And that is going to get the job done. Osyp Lebedowicz is going to win this match here over Andrew Phillips. 2-1. The Pro Tour Vintage champion is 2-0 with Affinity. Takes down Grixis Twin. Both decks look to be pretty well positioned this weekend, but Affinity maybe more so is able to get by the Kolaghan's command deck.
And you see a smile here on Osyp's face, and that was a really nice Game 3. Not the easiest matchup. Affinity doesn't interact too well with the combo. He's playing against multiple copies of Kolaghan's command. His sequencing was really tight there, understood the value of Edge Champion in the matchup. Andrew couldn't stop it at all, and Osyp was able to really take the wind out of the sails of multiple copies of Kolaghan's command. The first one did very little, and the second one, Andrew conceded with it still in his hand.
It's always fun to talk to Affinity players when a new hate card comes out for Affinity. And there have been so many over the years, cards like Shatterstorm, Creeping Corrosion, Ancient Grudge. The list goes on and on and on. And Kolaghan's command is just another in that list. And, you know, for the Affinity players who've been playing Affinity for a while, you think of Osyp Lebedowicz, Paul Rietzel, Alex Mashelton, it's like, okay, well, are you scared of this one? Are you scared of this one? And most of the time, I'm scared of Ancient Grudge. Well, all the time, a card like Kolaghan's Command, it's 3 mana. 3 mana is a lot in this format.
And in a weird way, a card like Kolaghan's Command can end up helping a deck like Affinity quite a bit.